It's time for WorkCompTalk, coming to you from the Pacific Workers Studio in Concord, California. It's WorkCompTalk. Interesting people talking about the issues that affect the lives of the everyday people that keep our communities moving. Sponsored by Pacific Workers Compensation Law Center, the lawyers for injured workers. With offices in Concord and Oakland, Pacific Workers is the leader in California workers' compensation, representing injured workers throughout Northern California. PacificWorkers.com, the lawyers for injured workers. Now to your hosts, Eric and Carmen.
This is episode 1 of WorkCompTalk. I'm pleased to have Otis Landerholm kick off WorkCompTalk with us, episode 1.
Yay! I'm happy to be here.
All right.
I'm happy to have you.
Cool.
I'm not just pleased about this whole thing. I mean, this is pretty darn cool. We've been trying to get this off the ground for quite some time. Pretty excited about it. I'm Eric.
My name is Carmen.
And I'm Otis, and I'm honored to be here.
We are honored to have you. Otis and I have actually known each other for a long time, and we've done quite a bit of work together, which has always been a lot of fun. Kind of a mastermind group, right?
Yep.
In fact, the first person we told about the new podcast was Otis. We were at lunch, and I thought it would be great to have him on the show.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a little bit of background about Otis because it's a pretty cool background, actually. Otis is the founding attorney of Landerholm Immigration APC. We can explain that if you want, but probably pretty boring, right?
Yeah.
An immigration law firm based in Oakland, California. He speaks Spanish and Mandarin Chinese and has lived in several countries, including the United States, Spain, Argentina, Japan, China, and Ecuador.
That's right.
Wow. He's a certified specialist in immigration and nationality law from the State Bar of California, having demonstrated a high level of experience in immigration law and has been favorably evaluated by other legal professionals. It's not just like sit there and take a test, right?
That's right.
Otis has appeared on the Rising Stars list of the super lawyers since 2012, bestowed only upon 2.5% of attorneys within the state of California. And quite an honor, actually, to be in the Northern California Rising Stars list. It's very few. Right. His law firm earned a spot on the Law Firm 500 award list as one of the fastest growing law firms in America in 2016, 17, and 18. And I know how hard it is to actually make that list. He's the author of 2 books, There Is Hope, Your Guide to Winning in Immigration Court, and Overcoming the Immigration Lawyer's Struggle. It is a pleasure to have you on episode 1.
Thank you so much. It is an honor to be here.
Yeah. So, WorkCompTalk is, at its core about workers' comp.
Yep.
But it's also about the intersection of workers' comp and a lot of other things.
Yep.
And we have done a lot of work together from the workers' comp side because immigration and workers' comp intersect quite a bit.
Yep.
Yeah. And basically, I'm going to ask you straight up, what are you seeing lately in immigration law? Because it's an interesting place these days.
Yes, it is. Yeah, thanks for asking that question. We just this morning received a call from another of, I would say, 6 similar calls just in the last week of a gentleman who's here and his girlfriend entering from overseas was denied entry in the airport, turned around, sent back to her home country of Korea in this case, with expedited removal order, a straight up deportation done by Border Patrol and canceling the visa over what I would call very, very ridiculous, made up, theoretical almost accusations that she might have been working in the United States in violation of her tourist visa. Zero evidence of it. Zero, they found that she was going to conferences in the United States related to her employment in Korea. And the problem is that we can't really do anything because now she's already back in Korea. We can't sue him about it. We can't challenge it. We can't fight really. And what we're seeing more and more is all of these silly reasons to on technicalities deny people the ability to enter the United States. And the coronavirus is happening right now. Maybe that's in the back of the Border Patrol officers' minds. But I know that the Trump administration is just finding ways to restrict people from wanting to immigrate to the United States. They're making it harder to get visas to begin with, and that we're just seeing that.
Now, would you say this is something that just merely happened now with this new administration, or is this something that it's probably happened before, it's just not so known because social media is all out there now?
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that has?
Well, within the first week of the Trump administration, he passed his travel ban, where 7 Muslim-majority countries were now banned for the first time ever from getting visas or green cards into the U.S. Earlier this year, Trump expanded the travel ban in something that was hardly publicized at all, but affects millions of people, right? And
how did he expand it?
Say again?
How did he expand it?
Added countries to the list of banned countries. Yeah. Nigeria is the biggest of the countries that now has been joined to the travel ban. And so what we're just seeing politically is a clamp down on welcoming human beings to come check out the U.S. And it's something that I really love being an immigration lawyer because our firm stands against this. Our firm strongly believes in the freedom of movement, that people ought to be free to travel where they want to. But we are definitely at a historic time right now where we are not welcoming other people to come into the United States, and the ramifications of that are dark and nasty, and so I want to do everything in my power to fight against it.
So that brings me to something else, because the coronavirus is spreading. It's happening quickly, and how do you think that's going to actually affect immigration?
Honestly, I fear, and so the American Immigration Lawyers Association, which AILA, which is a great organization, which I'm a member of too, they haven't said anything specific. I don't think they catch wind on anything that has actually been announced politically about this. But the fear is that this will just be another excuse or another reason or another way that the government can justify limiting, restricting travel into the U.S.
Well, have they already limited from China?
Yeah, well, so they're increasing quarantine, right? So quarantine itself is a way of putting fear out there so that anybody that's coming in from certain regions of the world now has to go through an additional process to even see if they're going to be allowed into the U.S. And so that in and of itself is a scary process, and I'm not going to say that there's a problem. I mean, there's no problem with that. We want to get the virus under control, but we don't want to use the virus as some blanket excuse to now just, let's jump on that to deny all immigration. Yeah.
Scary stuff.
It's scary stuff.
The virus and the fact that this is really going to allow the administration powers under health, safety, and welfare.
That's right.
Right.
That's exactly right.
Which a month ago they didn't have.
Yep.
Right.
It's now a new, unfortunate, new way to justify the ends that the current administration already is after.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. I want to come back to the coronavirus stuff a little bit, but let's talk about a little bit more about the intersection between workers' comp and immigration.
Yep.
As workers' comp lawyers, we see this all the time, that people are scared to file for workers' comp because they might be undocumented, but they shouldn't be, correct?
That's correct.
Why don't you tell us more? Because I know that on Pacific Workers' social media, once we put something about, that you have a right to file,
Yep.
and it was one of our most controversial posts ever.
Yep.
But you know a lot about this stuff, so why don't you talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, thanks. So the state of California is one of the best states as far as protecting immigrants. And in the state of California, it is completely legal. It is people have the right to receive compensation if they were, if they were harmed in an accident at their workplace. Regardless of immigration status. Immigration status is not part of the process, all right? In other states that may be less friendly, in the court processes, it's admissible as evidence whether or not there is immigration documents, and it can be asked in the process, and that information can go against a claim, is my understanding, all right? But here we are in the state of California. We're very happy to be here. We're very fortunate. And all the immigrants that are listening to this podcast, I very much encourage us to be grateful that we are in a state that actually values people and actually values immigrants regardless of background, right? And in this state, yes, file your workers' comp claim because you have a right to be compensated if you were injured at work. And that's what, workers' comp, I love the mission of workers' compensation because it's like, who's really getting the work done out there, right? And it's like, there's work that needs to get done out there. And the vast majority of the people that are doing the work are like, not the big rich folks that are driving whatever they're driving and, showing up at their political coffee houses to talk about what they want to do to run their whatever, The majority of the people that are getting injured on the job are exactly the people that I want to fight for, and they're exactly the people that we believe should have the right to make a go of their life,
Have an opportunity.
Have an opportunity.
Absolutely.
Right.
And they're an enormous contribution to our whole society, and without them, where would we, it would just fall like a stack of cards.
Absolutely. It's around here we say it's the people that keep our city moving.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? I mean, it's the restaurant workers, it's the frontline workers, it's the first responders, etc. And we are sitting really right on the edge of wine country, right?
Yes.
We're right on the edge of wine country. People don't think of California as a farming community. California is the biggest producer of food in the country, right? So they do it somewhere. We happen to be right on the cusp of it. I mean, we're Concord, right?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that the Concord grape? But it's exactly, we're talking about the farm workers. We're talking about the first generation, right?
That's right.
Yeah. I've always thought about it as California has a heart.
Yeah.
Because regardless of immigration status, if your foot's falling off, they don't want you dropped off at the hospital and not being able to get any treatment.
That's right.
And that's a big thing. I mean, they're very smart about it. I don't think it's a controversy at all, or
Yeah.
it shouldn't be a controversy.
It shouldn't be. That's right.
So, I know Carmen has another question for you.
I do. I actually have a couple of questions, but one of the main ones being the fact that we spoke about, a lot of people don't know that just because you don't have papers, so to say, or you're an immigrant in this country, but you have the option of opening a workers' comp case. One of the questions that comes up a lot would be, if I do open up a workers' comp case and I am in the middle of filing for my immigration status, does this affect in any way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good question, and the best answer to that question is if you have multiple legal cases going at once, workers' comp and an immigration case, talk to both lawyers. Make sure both lawyers are on the same page, right? Sometimes, me as an immigration lawyer, sometimes I love seeing that there's a workers' compensation case happening because sometimes we can actually use that as evidence towards our cases. And so don't be like afraid of filing a workers' comp case just because you have an immigration case pending. Sometimes it can actually benefit in one way or another the immigration case. Show that there's additional hardship, for example, to your family. Show that you've been a quality and strong worker in your community. Show that how much your family depends on you often can be a factor in immigration cases as well. And so it's like, I guess the thing to put out there is that for immigrants going through the process, yes, you're going through an immigration process. If you really are subject to something at work that gives you the right to file for workers' compensation benefits, then don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to talk to your lawyers on both sides of your case, and more than likely, just go for the compensation. It'll help you get back, get back on track with your life, so that you can take care of your family and take care of your cases and get everything back and going.
Well, it's interesting because we've had a lot of clients that will resolve their case and move back to wherever their home country is at the end of the case, and kind of start anew as well. And they start anew with healing and or healed, because part of comp is treatment, right? And or healed with a settlement in their pocket, so to speak, right? And they can really help their family. The ones who sort of take off and are nervous by it and take off and don't have the protection of your firm or a comp firm, or another immigration firm, et cetera, they're the ones who sort of end up in trouble.
Yes.
Yeah. You had another question, follow up?
Yeah, what are some of the complications when you're filing, say, for any type of immigration? What is like some of the most common complications people will see?
Mm-hmm. Workers' compensation really does not cause a complication per se to an immigration case.
Correct.
The things that really cause complications to an immigration case are arrests, use of drugs in the past, even marijuana, I should say. Marijuana is legal in the state of California, but don't use marijuana if you're an immigrant, all right? Federal law, if you're an immigrant, you're subject to federal law. It's still on the Federal Controlled Substances Act. Misrepresentations on an immigrant visa in the past causes a serious complication for an immigration case. If you've ever been in immigration court before or caught crossing the border without permission, things like that, those are the things that will really affect an immigration case. Whether or not you've been, or whether or not you have a workers' compensation case, it typically does not cause a problem at all for an immigration process.
Oh, that's good to know.
It's great to know.
Yeah.
Because I think look, half of the people that we talk to don't want to file their case because they're worried.
Yes.
They're concerned with their employers. They're concerned, and it's interesting. One of the attorneys here at Pacific Workers was even telling me that all of his brothers are in construction.
Yes.
And one of them said, "I'm not filing against my employer," and he says, "Of course you are. That's why your employer has this.
Mm-hmm.
So you can actually get the treatment. You're not dealing with, you're not dealing outside the system. This is not suing them,
mm-hmm.
right? It's filing an application,
mm-hmm.
right, for benefits. That's it. And so hearing that is really important, because it's one of the biggest things is the fact that if somebody doesn't have papers, as you say, or undocumented, they're so concerned with this.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about something kind of different.
Yep.
Sanctuary cities.
Okay.
Right. I read in the papers, if we don't really have papers, I guess that's just a phrase now, right? I read recently on something that used to be a newspaper, right?
Good.
Okay. Not just random. TheNewsToday.com, right?
It's the e-newspaper. Electronic news.
Well, this actually at least used to be a newspaper at one point, right? And it actually goes back like 100 years, right? So,
Reputable.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
I think they call it the New York Times.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, that's what that was.
Right, exactly. Yeah, thank God there's still the New York Times, right? So I was reading that the federal government was shutting down New Yorkers' ability at JFK to use global entry. Did you hear this?
I did hear this, yes.
And when I was coming back from Central America just over the weekend, the line at global entry was insane. It usually takes me like 15 seconds to get through that thing, right? I mean, like not quite 15 seconds, but no more than 3 minutes. Sunday was not that. I mean, the line was crazy, and essentially it was because they were asking a lot of questions to anybody coming from Asian countries, right? If you were coming from Central America, they didn't care, but that didn't mean anything for the line. We were still just backed up. But at first I thought, oh no, they have pulled global entry for San Francisco as well. Explain what sanctuary cities means.
Okay. I will try my best. All right. So sanctuary, different cities have different ordinances in place. And so just because the city of San Francisco has one sanctuary city policy doesn't, and the city of Chicago and the city of New York, several, they're Seattle, several cities have passed quote-unquote sanctuary policies, but just because they've each passed those policies does not mean that the policies that they have passed are equal, all right?
Right.
So generally, a city, when going through the process, will say that they will not use local funds, money, to support federal immigration detainers. So that if you're detained in a local jail, in like a city or county jail, that a person who doesn't have immigration status will not be held by the local jail longer than is necessary to determine whether or not there's probable cause and stuff like that to arrest a person. And there are some other policies as well that a sanctuary city will say, okay, we're limiting our city's cooperation with ICE. And that's essentially what a sanctuary city means. It means they're saying, hey, undocumented immigrants in general, are welcome to be in our city. In our community. ICE is there too, right?
Sure.
So ICE is still there, and they can still enforce immigration laws. But what they're saying is that our city money and our city resources are not going to be aiding, are not going to be assisting ICE in the going after of immigration issues. That's a federal issue. We want our city to be not relating to that federal issue.
Now it's evolved a lot.
It has.
Right? Because I think originally sanctuary cities were not quote unquote a sanctuary for if you were undocumented. It was in many ways it was about the safety of the community, right? That somebody could report a crime going on without the fear of being arrested themselves because they're undocumented.
Good.
Right? But it seems to have evolved, especially under the new administration, is sort of this batting of heads between locals and federal.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And what we're really seeing that is kind of the latest slap to sanctuary cities is whether or not those cities are going to still get federal funding.
Sure.
And so that's where the fight is happening, where the Trump administration does not want to, it says, okay, you're not going to help us with immigration stuff. We'll take away your funding for basic infrastructure or whatever else that all these cities will depend on.
Monster
amounts of money. Yes.
Monster amounts of money. Probably the majority of money that comes into a city.
Probably.
Right. I mean, we're good at that. We send our money we send our money from here to Washington, and it comes back.
Yes.
Right. but that's kind of that's tough stuff.
It is. And we're going to see what happens and what develops in that area. The lawsuit that you mentioned that's filed in New York, right? We're going to see what happens there and whether or not New York can push back against the Trump administration.
So is this actually a lawsuit?
It's the subject of a lawsuit right now that's pending. Yes.
So tell me about that. What is it?
I don't know much of the details. I know that it was filed in federal court in New York.
So I got to imagine, because I travel quite a bit. I go to Central America quite a bit. I'm taking off to go to Mexico in a few weeks on some business. And coming in and out with that global entry is a huge thing.
Mm-hmm.
My wife goes to, she's in the wine business. And so she goes to South America, she goes to Europe, coming back again is like she got the global entry first, and she was like, boy, this is a breeze.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a whole different ballgame if they take that away, right?
Yes, it will.
Yeah.
It will. I don't know the exact numbers of people with global entry, but yeah, the lines are as bad as they are already, and to take that away, it'll just, yeah.
Well, I got to imagine it's a lot, because you sort of get it at the same time you sort of do the TSA pre-number.
Mm-hmm.
And last time I went to Oakland Southwest Airlines, I was standing in the TSA line, which was longer than the normal line, right? So people have sort of gotten out. Now it's clear is the next level.
Yes,
right?
clear, that's right.
So I'm probably going to be signing up for Clear next, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Clear will get hacked and they'll have a
Right.
different
Just
one.
ways for them to continue to make money.
Right.
People that travel a lot like Eric.
How can people go about filing for residency?
Good. It's a tough question to answer quickly.
We're a podcast. Go on.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I love it. There are visas, there are green cards, there's asylum, there's removal defense, and there's U.S. citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
And those are like the big five. And so when we're talking immigration law, we're like, okay, which of those big types of processes might a person be eligible for? And so if the question is, okay, if I'm here undocumented in the U.S., how can I fix that? Then typically it's not going to be through a visa. There's only, in fact, 3 visas that can work if you're here in the U.S. and you're undocumented. And the most common one is what we call a U visa, which is for people who've been the victims of crimes here in the U.S.
In the U.S.
In the U.S. And you have to have cooperated with law enforcement in the investigation or the prosecution of whatever that crime was. So people who've been the victims of domestic violence, people who've been the victims of serious assaults. It has to be like a felonious, like a felony assault. People who've been the victims of other things also. Extortion, blackmail. There's a list of 40 some odd different crimes that would qualify.
But they don't make that easy, because you could see there would be quite a bit of abuse on that.
Yes, they don't make it easy at all. And you have to, a law enforcement agency has to certify that you were helpful in the investigation or the prosecution of some crime in order to even submit the request to immigration. So that's a U visa. And anybody that's listening to this that has questions about U visas, give our office a call. We do a lot of U visas.
And what's that phone number?
Oh, it's 510-488-1020, LanderholmImmigration.com. Check us out. We can help you with that.
We'll plug them after.
Yeah, we can plug that stuff. Yeah. As far as other processes, the most common, I would say, is through a family-based process. So if you're a foreign national and if you're marrying a U.S. citizen has the right to petition a foreign spouse, okay? The question always is, okay, great, I've married a U.S. citizen, now that spouse can petition me, sure. Can I use that petition? And that depends on several things. That depends on how you entered the U.S. That depends on whether or not you've ever been arrested. That depends on whether or not you've ever used any controlled substance. That depends on whether or not you've ever misrepresented anything to immigration before. There's lots of things. In short, whether or not you're quote-unquote admissible and we can go through the categories to see that. And then the other big area is asylum. And asylum means that you're afraid for your life to return to your country. Asylum, the word, means protection.
Sure.
And what we're saying is, hey, you know, if your life or your freedom would be threatened if you were to return to your country because of one of a few specific reasons that are approvable by law. But if you can win asylum in the U.S., then you can get a green card after 1 year.
How does this affect now with all the people that are coming to the Mexican borders to try to seek asylum? Like, has that changed anything?
Oh, it's awful. It's awful. So right now what's happening is there are camps that are in Mexico of people who have been processed by Border Patrol and told to wait in Mexico for their hearing. And they have a date and they have a time for them to show back up at the border, and they'll have a video teleconference with an immigration judge.
Wow.
And this is happening, and it's a horrendous problem because many of these people really do have asylum cases, but many of them do not have lawyers that are helping them, all right? And many of them don't know how to get a lawyer that's helping them because they're in Mexico. Mexican lawyers can't argue in front of the U.S. Executive Office of Immigration Review, the immigration courts. It's a mess, and this whole process is just like, it's driving me crazy because I myself want to be doing more to help these people, and it's like I haven't figured out the way to really be able to offer those services.
How many of those people?
Thousands.
No, I know there's thousands. Yeah. And a lot of them are not from Mexico.
That's
They're
true.
coming through from Guatemala, from Honduras, from Ecuador, from all sorts of different, from Nicaragua, from Belize, etc. Has anybody tried to figure out how many of these are real asylum cases?
Yeah, there are agencies on the border right now, nonprofits and things like that are trying to do intakes on everybody. I don't have good percentages to give here. I would love to have them because we maybe put a link, or I could send you information about what's happening on the border.
We could put it up on WorkCompTalk.
Sure. It's a disaster. It's a disaster. It is like, it's something that's very, very frustrating to me because our firm is very passionate about asylum specifically, and so it's like, refugee rights, and people are fleeing for their lives from their country. They need to be able to explain their case and have their case be heard in an objective way with give them a chance. Sure. And right now they're not.
So, I mean, a lot of this asylum stuff came during the 60s, during the 70s, during the revolutions, during the, the Sandinista eras or the Contra eras. Is this, Pinochet? I mean, we're talking about dictators, bad dictators over the course of 40, 50 years in these countries.
Yeah.
And that's where asylum came from, right?
Well, so close, very close. The initial convention, it was the Geneva Convention on Refugees. It was 1951. It was right after World War II.
Sure, it was World War II.
It was really World War II. Yeah. And so the question there on everybody's mind is, okay, we've got Jews fleeing from Nazi Germany.
Yeah.
How can we create a legal system that's international law where a person who has fled won't get deported back to that situation, right? Yeah. And so, if we want to get into asylum law, to win, you've got to show that you have a well-founded fear of persecution on account of one of 5 things. It's got to be on account of your race, your religion, your nationality, your political opinion, that's why they call it political asylum, right, or your quote-unquote membership in a particular social group. But if we look at those, race, religion, nationality,
those 3 are going to be the same for most of them, right?
It's going to be the same for most of them. And what's happening right now, and the problem with asylum law based on that, is that it hasn't evolved with the type of violence that we're seeing right now in the world.
Sure.
The narco-trafficking gangs that are killing and threatening all of the community in Guatemala and Honduras and Nicaragua right now, they're not doing it because of the guy's religion. And they're not doing it because of their race or their politics, right? They're doing it because they're doing it to everybody because they're trying to get money to fund their narco trafficking craziness and their power, right? And so it's like, people that are fleeing from those contexts, they're really hard asylum cases to win anyway.
Absolutely, sure. I mean, you can see this. I mean, this is just the state of affairs. It's you don't get immigration status in the U.S. because you're poor.
That's right.
Right? And because you live in a, I mean, my best friend travels around the world. He's been doing it for the last 13 years, and he says, and I say, aren't you worried? And he says, well, you live in the most dangerous country in the world. You don't get it because you live in a bad neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right? There are reasons for it. And it's interesting because back in 1952 and prior to that, after World War II, Jews were trying to enter into countries, and essentially they could get into two, which was the U.S. and Canada. Everybody else rejected them, right? England, they were fleeing Europe anyway. I mean, but there were very few countries that would actually let them in, and the U.S. was basically it. A lot went to Canada, but the U.S. was the majority of it. And there were some in Central and South America. South America took in a lot as well. People are always surprised to know that.
Yeah, a lot went to Argentina. My living in Argentina was like, wow.
Yeah,
it's huge.
Huge Jewish community in Argentina. But today's, they're not escaping Pinochet, right? They're not escaping. Right. They're not escaping the death squads in Central America.
That's right.
Right. It's not political, so to speak.
That's
It's it's gang run stuff.
And it makes it all the more tricky to successfully litigate. And a lot of these asylum cases end up going to court. Right. And so and we've got to argue creatively that there's an implied political opinion, because often in certain places the guy from your local county is in and connected with the cartel that runs your local area, right? And so if we can show things like that, then now we can put creative arguments forward and we can win some cases, right?
Interesting.
But it's not easy to do, and it takes some legal research and it takes some good lawyering, I would say, but also some judges that are willing to hear some creative arguments.
Well, that's pretty interesting because the tell us, obviously it's federal.
Yes.
But are you ending up in front of federal court, or is it a different court?
It's an agency. So it's the Executive Office of Immigration Review is part of the Department of Homeland. It's part of the Department of Justice. So it's under the it's under the executive branch, right? It's under the Attorney General. All right. And so the problem with that is that these judges are appointed by the president. They're not, and they can be fired instantly. There's no tenure, right? And it is very not impartial, because the attorney it's policy. It's totally driven by policy.
Yeah.
They're outside of the Department of Homeland Security, which is where the attorneys are that are trying to deport everybody.
Right.
The Department of Homeland Security runs ICE, runs the Border Patrol, runs USCIS, which is the Citizenship and Immigration Service. And so at least we're in the Department of Justice and outside of DHS. But still, being in justice, it's like it's not an impartial court. And so the only way to get an impartial court is if we lose at the immigration court level, appeal to the Board of Immigration Appeals, which is in Falls Church, Virginia. And if we lose there, then and only then can we get in front of a federal court, and it's really a direct petition for review to the Ninth Circuit in California.
Interesting.
Yep. Anyway, that's the process.
And if there's another 4 years of the administration, we're probably going to see all the judges different.
I know.
Across the board, right?
Yeah, they're hiring new judges right now, at a crazy rate. And the problem for that is that we're getting all these inexperienced judges that don't really understand the law, and they're coming from politics that are more lenient to the current administration, which is not good.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, at least unlike the federal justice system,
Yes.
they're not there for life.
Yes, that's a good point.
Right.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Although that cuts both ways, because then the next president comes in, then President Trump comes in, and it's like, okay, you're not hitting your quotas, you're not hitting your quotas, you're not hitting your quotas, shape it up or get out. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And
But
those
the next
quotas
president's
are,
gonna change.
that's right, the next president,
We're not the same with the federal justice
that's true,
system, right?
That's true.
And especially the Supreme Court.
Yep, that's true.
It
slices both ways, yeah, that's right.
Work permits. Let's talk about work permits.
All right, great. Yes, one of our favorite topics. So people often come in and they want to know, hey, how can I get myself a work permit? All right, and the answer is it depends. Some people are eligible, some people aren't. Some people might be eligible in just a 6-month wait after we file the process. Some people, it might take years, all right? For example, if we file a U visa today, the very first work permit that a person can get through a U visa won't be for 4 or 5 years.
Oh, wow.
All right. The U visa process itself right now is taking 13 to 15 years total because the wait list. Years. Because the wait list is that long.
So what are you supposed to do while you're waiting? Fiddle with your fingers?
Yeah, it's pretty awful.
Wow.
Versus asylum, for example, you file for asylum in 180 days. You can file your first request for a work permit, and typically, 6 months or so thereafter, you get your work permit. Yep.
13 to 15 years. What kind of jobs are we talking about? Because obviously the
H-1Bs.
H-1B
Yes.
is for
Yeah, right. So
highly skilled, correct?
highly skilled workers, and so those, if you're undocumented living in the U.S., you're not going to qualify for an H-1B.
Right.
Period. Right. To get an employment-based visa, which comes with automatic work authorization built into that visa, to get that type of visa, you've got to apply from your home country before ever entering the U.S.
Right.
And the job has to petition for that type of visa and show that they've complied with the Department of Labor process, to show that there's not enough U.S. citizen workers to work that job, et cetera, et cetera. There's a big process that people go through to get those types of work visas.
Right.
That's different, though, from getting just like a work permit, which you might be eligible for even if it's not a work visa, even if it's through, for example, TPS, which is temporary protected status. DACA status comes with a work permit. Asylum cases come with a work permit. If you're in removal proceedings in court, you can apply for a work permit depending on how you
But what kind of,
Yeah.
somebody's here, they've come in undocumented, they're going to get a job at a restaurant.
Yep.
Any chance of a work permit?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
What are some of the reasons that they could get one?
Yeah, if they, so U visa, for example, if they've ever been the victim of any crime, if they're afraid for their life to return to their country, we're talking asylum. If they're married to a U.S. citizen, we're talking a marriage-based case, you can get a work permit through that. If you're eligible for TPS or DACA, which we could talk about, if you are in immigration court proceedings and you're filing for what we call cancellation of removal, we could talk about that. You're eligible for a work permit. Otherwise, the vast majority of people don't have the eligibility to get a work permit, which is very frustrating, and they won't have a real way of fixing their immigration status until the law changes.
If and when it changes.
Yep.
Anything on the horizon that would think that there's going to be a change?
Here's the truth. There are 11 million undocumented immigrants in the United States who are completely peaceful, completely working, completely no issues, right? And the legal system is completely, I was going to say unfair, unjust, kind of, it doesn't account for them.
They're blinded.
When was the last time there was actual asylum?
Amnesty?
Amnesty. Was that under the Bush administration?
It was under the Reagan administration.
Reagan.
Yeah, in the 80s.
I thought it was the Bush administration.
Well, it depends on what you want to call amnesty. It depends on what you want to call amnesty. So really, in the 1980s, there was the Seasonal Agricultural Workers Program under the Reagan administration that allowed anybody that was working in the fields, right, to get a work permit. All right. Under Clinton, there was something called NACARA, which was a kind of an amnesty for NACARA standard for the Nicaraguan and Central American Relief Act.
And that's coming back now.
Coming
right?
back.
Yeah.
And it's a so that granted a way of applying for residency for people that had entered before a certain date in 1990 from a certain from one of a few different countries and had applied for asylum before.
And that had a lot to do with political.
And it had a lot to do with
Because
political.
with the problems in the country going on at the time, right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And it was, quite frankly, a problem within our own asylum process here, because asylum applications from those countries were getting denied and denied and denied and denied, mainly because the people were poor,
Right.
not giving a real thorough evaluation of the merits of their asylum cases, and they realized that this was a problem with the asylum system, and so they passed a law to fix it.
And now this has come back in the Trump administration because they've said, hey, the problems that existed back then don't exist now, go home.
Yes, yeah. That's one of the. I mean, there's so many problems right now in the Trump administration.
Right. But let's think about it for a minute, right? Ronald Reagan was a right-wing Republican in 1980 when he won the presidency. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Think about where he'd be on the political spectrum now.
I know, it's crazy.
Could you ever imagine the Republican administration giving asylum now or giving amnesty now?
Yeah. Even the mention of the word is somehow like a Horcrux.
Yeah.
To use a Harry Potter term. It's like this unmentionable bad thing.
I mean, it's really amazing what is, how everything has changed so much, right?
Yeah, I know, it's crazy.
What should people know about comp and immigration? Is there something else like a wrap up?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the takeaway that I want everybody who's an immigrant who's listening to this to know is to not ever be afraid to get answers to questions.
Yeah.
And so, if you've been hurt at work, if you've been, if you're undocumented, period, in anything, in any situation, pick up the phone and call and get information from a source that's reputable, from somebody who actually knows what they're doing, who actually cares about your situation. And let's get to the bottom of whether or not there's a solution. Because there's a lot more solutions out there than what people are aware of, or than what you might just be advised of reading the paper or whatever, right? Yeah. And so it's important to get informed. And I just really recommend that whether it's for comp or for immigration or really for any legal issue, don't be afraid to pick up the phone and get yourself informed. All right. So many people
just read it on the internet because everything.
Oh yeah.
On the internet is true.
Yeah.
See, that's the problem too.
That is a massive problem.
There's so much information on there. And
and the other thing that I'll say about that is it's also, hey, my friend went to a lawyer and they said that they didn't have a case, so I must not have a case.
Right.
It's really, cases are different, people are different. Get information about your situation. Yeah. Anyway, that's it. Yeah.
So, how do people get a hold of you? You're on Facebook.
We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. We're online. Our phone number is 510-488-1020. My name is Otis Landerholm. Our firm is Landerholm Immigration. You can look us up, landerholmimmigration.com. The full name is Landerholm Immigration APC. Where we fight for your American dream is our tagline. But really, we are here to fight for people who are wanting to stay in the United States. And we love fighting complex immigration cases. Mm-hmm.
Otis, thank you for being our first guest, episode 1. And I encourage people to reach out to Otis if you have more questions. And you do a lot of Facebook live events.
We do Facebook live events.
Yeah, once a month?
Yep, once a month. We do a free monthly seminar on a different topic.
Right.
And so,
There's
That's
so
great.
many topics to talk about, and in general, I'm pretty sure this is not the last time we're going to hear you on the podcast. There's a lot to talk about. So thank you for listening to WorkCompTalk. This is Carmen Ramirez, your co-host and producer of WorkCompTalk. Our next guest will be Eric Toscano. Eric is the principal attorney for the Tenant Law Group in San Francisco, California. He'll be talking about issues relating to the intersection of work comp and landlord-tenant. If you have any questions, you want to ask Eric, or want to connect with us, simply send us an email to connect@workcomptalk.net or visit us at workcomptalk.net. We want to thank our sponsor, Pacific Workers Compensation Law Center, the lawyers for injured workers. Pacific Workers is the leader in California applicants' workers' compensation, representing injured workers in their fight for justice against the insurance companies. You can find them on the web at www.pacificworkers.com. I'm Carmen Ramirez. Thanks for listening.